In this video, I'm going to share a communication skill that most men were never taught. One that can create sexual tension in seconds. Even when a conversation sounds polite and harmless on the surface, there's a subtle shift you can make in how you communicate that turns ordinary words into real chemistry she can actually feel in her body. Most men go their entire lives without ever learning this, and that's why they remain forgettable. When you understand this shift, you become the man she remembers long after the conversation ends. I'm Dr. Eva Danielle, your trusted men's health advisor, and today we're diving into something that changes how attraction is created through words. We're going to talk about why most men's conversational style creates no attraction at all, how they unintentionally shut down sexual tension before it even has a chance to form, what innuendo really is and why it works so powerfully on female psychology, and finally, how to use it in a way that feels natural, playful, and safe without crossing lines or making things awkward. Before we get into the technique itself, you need to understand the psychology behind it, because that's what makes this work. If you skip the why, you'll miss what gives this approach its power. Most men communicate in a very logical, predictable, and polite way. They speak the way they were taught to speak at work, in school, or around authority figures. And while that's useful in professional environments, it creates absolutely no emotional or sexual response in a woman. When you talk like that, your words stay on the surface. They don't reach her emotions, they don't stir her imagination, and they don't create any tension. You've probably experienced this yourself. You're talking to a woman, everything seems fine, but you can feel her interest slowly draining away. Her responses get shorter, her energy drops, and at some point you just know she's checked out. That moment feels awful because you didn't do anything wrong, yet nothing clicked. This is exactly where innuendo changes everything. Innuendo turns a flat, forgettable conversation into something charged and playful, while staying subtle enough that it doesn't trigger resistance. Instead of forcing attraction, you invite it. Instead of pushing, you allow her own imagination to do the work. That's why it creates tension so quickly and so naturally. One of the biggest mistakes men make is falling into dead-end conversations. They ask question after question, almost like they're conducting an interview, without adding any spark of their own. They're polite, respectful, and attentive, but they never bring in playfulness or desire. Over time, the woman feels bored, even if she likes them as a person. Eventually, she says something like, "It was nice meeting you," and disappears from their life. On the flip side, some men try to fix this by going too far in the opposite direction. They jump straight into heavy, direct sexual talk. They say exactly what they want, exactly how they want it, far too early. When that happens, most women immediately put their guard up. They pull back, feel uncomfortable, or label the man as inappropriate. Attraction collapses just as quickly as it started. This is where innuendo becomes your secret weapon. It sits perfectly between those two extremes. It keeps the conversation flirty and charged without being explicit. It gives her freedom. She can laugh it off, lean into it, or keep it light. And no matter what she chooses, she stays comfortable and engaged. Because nothing was said outright, nothing feels forced. Innuendo works in social settings, on first dates, and even over text, as long as the energy is right. It's a skill you want to have available at all times. Once you understand how it works, you can use it naturally without overthinking. At its core, innuendo is about double meaning. There's the surface meaning, completely normal, innocent, and socially acceptable. Underneath that, there's a second meaning that carries a subtle sexual charge. She hears both at the same time, and that's what creates the spark. To use innuendo effectively, you need to understand what actually engages her desire. Attraction isn't generic, it's personal. That's why real conversations about desire matter so much. When you understand what excites her, what makes her feel safe exploring chemistry, and what she responds to emotionally, your communication becomes much more powerful. Here's how innuendo works in practice. Sometimes she'll hand you an opening without even realizing it. She might say something simple like, "It's been such a long day." Certain words carry what I call a dual charge. On the surface, they're innocent, but with the right tone, timing, and delivery, they take on a second meaning. Words like long, hard, soft, deep, tight, warm, good. These are all neutral words that can become suggestive depending on how you use them. When she uses one of these words, you don't need to invent anything clever. You simply reflect it back, but with intention. You slow down. You add a pause. You shift your tone slightly. For example, if she says, "It's been such a long day," you might respond with something like, "Yeah, long days can be interesting sometimes." The words themselves are harmless. What changes everything is how you say them. Delivery is everything. If you rush it or say it flatly, there's no effect. The pause, the emphasis, the relaxed confidence, that's what creates the tension. This does take practice. Most men freeze in the moment because they haven't trained this skill. When you're standing in front of a woman you're attracted to, your mind can go blank. That's normal. You'll fall back to whatever you've practiced the most, which is usually polite, logical conversation. The more you practice innuendo, the more natural it becomes. There's also a more advanced form of innuendo, and this is where things get really fun. Sometimes she won't give you an obvious trigger word. She might say something completely mundane, like, "I have a lot of laundry to do tomorrow." On the surface, there's nothing there. But if you look a little deeper, you'll notice that almost every topic involves physical movement or sensory experiences. Laundry involves hands, bending, warmth, textures. You can choose an angle and frame it playfully without being explicit, and suddenly the conversation has energy. The same applies to food, activities, routines, anything. Attraction isn't about what she says. It's about how you respond. When you learn to layer meaning into your words, you can create chemistry from almost any situation. At the end of the day, sexual attraction isn't about money, looks, or status. It's about how you make her feel in the moment. When you stop communicating purely from logic and start engaging her imagination, you stand out immediately. You become the man who feels different, who feels exciting, who feels memorable. As you start using this approach, pay attention to her reactions. You'll notice more laughter, more eye contact, more leaning in. That's how you know it's working. Keep practicing, stay relaxed, and remember that the goal isn't to impress. It's to create a shared emotional experience. As you continue developing this skill, also focus on your overall presence. Innuendo works best when it's paired with calm confidence, good listening, and genuine curiosity. Take care of your physical health, your emotional balance, and your sense of purpose. When those foundations are strong, your words naturally carry more weight. Communication isn't just about technique. It's about who you are when you speak. Keep learning, keep growing, and keep becoming the kind of man whose presence alone creates attraction.